The Gathering Storm, HFY story, third person. The Galactic Council Station floated in the endless dark of space. It was larger than any moon, built from shining metals and glowing towers that stretched like spires into the void. For centuries, this place had been the center of power, where empires debated, bargained, and sometimes threatened one another. Today, however, something different was happening. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Grand Council Hall. Their voices echoed across the chamber. Scaled diplomats hissed in their native tongues. Winged creatures rustled their feathers nervously, and massive armored beings stomped their feet against the floor. Everyone had gathered for one reason. The humans, most of the galaxy, had only heard stories about Earth, a small planet on the edge of nowhere. To many, humans were still considered young, reckless, even primitive. They had only recently been invited to join the council, and most species laughed at the thought. What can such a fragile race offer? Some aliens asked. They fight. Among themselves, they destroy their own world. They are no threat, but rumors had spread. Whispers carried through space lanes. The humans were bringing a warship to the council station. Not just any ship, a warship said to be unlike anything seen before. In the hall, alien voices clashed. They cannot be serious, hissed a thin, snake-like delegate. A warship? Here? It is madness. A hulking reptilian general laughed, his sharp teeth flashing in the light. If it is human-made, it will fall apart before it even reaches the station. Let them embarrass themselves. Others were less certain. A group of insectoid admirals studied the latest reports. The size of the vessel did not match anything in the human fleet records. It was larger, heavier, and moved with strange speed. Something about it did not add up. High above, in the command chamber of the station, the council leaders gathered. From behind glass walls, they could see the entire galaxy's most powerful empires waiting below. The atmosphere was tense. Even the most arrogant rulers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then it happened. The station sensors lit up. A ripple in space. The lights flickered for a moment as the scanners tried to read the distortion. A voice from the control deck shouted, "Something is emerging from faster-than-light travel." Every alien in the chamber froze. The vast screen in the hall flickered to life, showing the empty black of space outside the station. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the void itself seemed to split open. A ship appeared. It was massive, larger than most fleets. Its black hull absorbed the light around it, making it look like a piece of night itself had broken free and taken form. Strange patterns glowed faintly across its surface lines of energy. It pulsed like veins. The engines burned with steady, white fire, but the ship moved silently, like a predator gliding through the dark. Gasps filled the chamber. The reptilian general who had been laughing fell silent, his yellow eyes wide. The snake-like delegate curled backward, his scales twitching with unease. Even the insectoid admirals, who rarely showed emotion, clicked their mandibles nervously. The scanners of the station screamed with impossible readings. Shield strength beyond known limits. Weapon power that exceeded entire fleets. And yet, the ship did nothing. It only drifted closer, calm and patient, like a beast that knew it had no rival. The hall erupted with voices. "This cannot be real." One shouted, "They are bluffing." "It is an illusion," cried another. "No, no illusion," whispered a veteran warlord. His voice trembled as he remembered ancient warnings about Earth. This is human." Down below, silence spread. The laughter was gone. The mockery vanished. Even the proudest rulers sat frozen in their seats, their eyes locked on the screen. The human warship stopped just outside the station. It did not open fire. It did not send a message. It only waited. its shadow covering the stars like a storm about to break. The aliens held their breath. In that moment, one truth became clear. This was not a ship built for show. This was not a fragile toy of a young species. This was a warning. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, fell silent, and the silence was not peace. It was fear. Asterisk, the arrival of the unknown. HFY story, third person. The human warship floated outside the council station like a shadow carved from the void. It made no sound, no movement, yet its presence weighed heavily on every soul inside the chamber. Even the great alien empires races that had conquered star systems and burned planets felt a cold unease crawling through their spines. The council hall was no longer filled with noise. Instead, silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. Every delegate, every soldier, every ruler sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the massive ship beyond the glass viewports. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the warship shifted. Its black hull caught the light of the distant stars, revealing more details. The surface was layered with armor plates, thick enough to withstand the bombardment of entire fleets. Strange glowing lines ran across. Its body, pulsing with energy no alien scientist could explain. It looked less like a machine and more like a living thing, a creature of war born from Earth itself. On the station's command deck, a young technician's voice cracked as he read. The scanner results aloud. Shields. Their shields are stronger than anything in our database. The energy output is impossible. It is as if they carry the power of a sun inside that ship. The insectoid admirals clicked their mandibles rapidly, a sign of unease. The reptilian general, who once mocked humans, now clenched his claws tightly against the railing. Even he, a warrior who had fought in hundreds of battles, could not hide the tremor in his tail. Then the weapons were scanned. The readouts appeared across the screens. The council members leaned forward, and their faces paled. The human warship carried cannons that registered beyond the station's measuring scale. Plasma lances thicker than city blocks. Railguns long enough to pierce through moons. A single broadside could erase an entire fleet. The ship was death-given shape, a weapon beyond imagination. And yet, the humans had not fired a single shot. Instead, the warship simply turned, aligning itself so its long black frame faced the station directly. It stared at the council hall as if it could see every alien inside. The silence grew heavier. Delegates began whispering nervously. Why are they not contacting us? What do they want? Perhaps they are testing us, waiting to see how we react. In the shadows of the hall, a veteran alien admiral spoke softly, his voice full of dread. No, they are not testing us. They are showing us. This ship is not a message. It is a warning. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, unseen figures watched quietly. Their voices were calm, their expressions unreadable. They did not boast. They did not threaten. They only waited. Back in the council chamber, fear began to spread like a sickness. Even the most powerful races, who once demanded respect through fear, now sat in silence, realizing they were the ones being judged. Then the station's lights flickered. A low hum echoed through the walls. The humans were powering something. Every alien eye turned to the massive screen. The warship's hull began to glow faintly. Energy pulsed from its core, running through the strange patterns like fire spreading through veins. The scanner screamed with warnings. Energy surge detected, the technician shouted. They are preparing to fire, another cried. Chaos erupted. Delegates scrambled from their seats. Guards raised their weapons, even though they knew they were useless. The entire hall filled with shouts of panic. But then, the warship did not fire at the station. Instead, it slowly rotated its massive body. Its cannons locked onto a barren moon floating near the station. The alien rulers froze, realizing what was about to happen. Without warning, a single beam of light erupted from the human warship Dot. It was silent, clean, precise. The beam struck the moon, and in less than 3 seconds, the entire moon shattered. Stone turned to dust, and the fragments scattered into the void like ash in the wind. The council hall fell quiet once again. No one moved. No one spoke. The humans had just destroyed a celestial body as easily as one might crush a stone beneath their hand. The warship then turned back to face the station. Its weapons powered down, its lights dimmed. Once again, it sat in silence, calm and patient. The message was clear. This was not aggression. This was demonstration. The aliens stared in horror, their minds spinning with questions. If one human warship could do this, how many more did they have? And if this was only their first design, what would the next look like? At last, a simple transmission came through. It was not long, not complicated. Just a few words, spoken in a calm human voice. We come in peace, but never test us. The words echoed through the hall. No one dared to answer. The galaxy, once loud with arrogance and pride, now sat in silence. And every being in that station understood. Nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk. Fear in the Council. HFY story. Third person. The council hall was frozen. The echoes of the human message, we come in peace. But never test us, still hung in the air like a ghost. No one dared to speak first. No one wanted to draw the attention of the warship waiting outside. Finally, the silence cracked. They destroyed a moon, whispered a trembling delegate from the Averic Empire. His thin insect legs rattled against the floor. Ah, a moon with one shot. Do you understand what that means? Another voice shouted across the chamber. It was a warning. They brought a weapon of war into our heart. They spit on our laws. They must be punished before it is too late. But no one moved to agree. For centuries, the Galactic Council had been a stage of arrogance. The strongest empires pushed the weaker ones into silence. Threats and ultimatums were daily games. But today, in front of that human warship, no one raised their voice with true conviction. Even the mighty races that had burned whole planets now hesitated. The reptilian general who had mocked the humans earlier slammed his claws against the table, forcing courage into his trembling voice. We should not be afraid. They only showed us one ship. Perhaps it is their only one. Perhaps they bluff. An insectoid admiral turned her many eyes toward him. Her mandibles clicked coldly. You fool! Do you not feel it? That was nada. Bluff. No race builds such a ship for nothing. If this is their first, then what else do they hide? The general opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. His scales twitched. His yellow eyes darted toward the giant screen, with a warship still, waited like a predator. His pride crumbled into silence. In the shadows of the chamber, an older alien lord rose from his seat. His voice was quiet, but carried through the hall like a whisper of doom. I warned you long ago about the humans. All eyes turned toward him. He was a veteran of countless wars, his skin scarred, his body heavy with age. He leaned forward. On his staff as he spoke, do you think they are weak because they are young? Do you think they are reckless because they fight among themselves? No, they are strong because of it. They are born in fire. Their history is war after war, death after death, yet they do not vanish. They survive. They rebuild. They rise again. Stronger. They always rise. The chamber grew darker, the aliens' words sinking like stones into the hearts of all who listened. I fought wars across 3 centuries. I have seen species rise and fall, but never have I seen a race so comfortable with destruction. They burn their own world, yet they live. They kill their own kind, yet they grow. If such a species turns its gaze outward, tell me, who among us can stand against them? The hall fell silent again. The truth was clear, and it tasted like Ashdot. The human warship outside did not move. It only waited. Its silence was more terrifying than any threat. It was as if humanity was daring the galaxy to make the first mistake. At last, a nervous voice broke the quiet. It came from a younger alien officer, her tone almost a whisper. What if? She paused, her words shaking. What if this is not their strongest? What if this is only their beginning? Gasps filled the room. The thought settled into every mind like poison. If one warship could shatter a moon, what could an entire fleet do? What could humanity unleash if provoked? A wave of unease swept the chamber. The proud empires that once laughed at humanity now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The weaker species trembled openly, fearing they would be crushed if war ever came. Some whispered about alliances. Others muttered about surrender before a single shot was ever fired, and a few dark minds began to plot, because fear does not always lead to peace. Sometimes fear breeds desperation. High above, the council leaders looked at each other with pale faces. Their voices shook as they debated in secret. Do we welcome them, or do we resist them? One asked. If we resist, we die, another replied. If we welcome them, we may still die, only slower. The warship remained still. Its dark hull glowed faintly with unseen power. It seemed to listen, to watch, to wait, and in that silence, the galaxy understood one truth. The balance of power had shifted. Humanity had arrived. The council chamber, once a place of noise and arrogance, now sat in fearful quiet. Every empire felt the same question echoing in their hearts. What would happen if the humans ever decided they were no longer here in peace? The chamber lights dimmed slightly, as if the warship's shadow had crept inside. Delegates lowered their heads. No one dared look up. And then, suddenly, the human warship's engines roared to life. The sound shook the station's walls, vibrating through every floor. Lights flickered. Scanners screamed warnings. The ship was moving again. The council members leapt to their feet, terror rushing through them. Was this the moment humanity would strike? The massive black vessel began to turn, its giant cannons shifting like the eyes of a predator choosing its next prey. The galaxy held its breath. The whisper of history. HFY story. Third person. The human warship drifted slowly, its colossal frame gliding across the stars. Every alien inside the council chamber felt the rumble of its engines through the station's walls. It was like the heartbeat of a giant predator, steady and unshaken. The delegates sat frozen. They had seen this destruction of a moon, heard the human warning, and now watched as the ship repositioned itself with terrifying precision. No fleet in the galaxy dared move. No empire dared speak too loudly. But silence cannot last forever. Fear demanded answers. At the center of the chamber, the council historians activated their archives. Towering screens lit up, filling the air with moving images, old records, and fragments of human history that had been collected over the years. The first images were of Earth itself, blue oceans, green lands, storm-filled skies. To many aliens, it looked beautiful, almost fragile. Yet the records told a darker story. Wars, endless wars. The archives showed battles fought with swords and spears, then cannons and muskets, then tanks and planes. Entire continents burned in conflict. Cities turned to rubble. Billions had died across centuries. And still, humanity endured. A trembling delegate muttered, "They fight themselves more than any enemy." Another added, No other species could survive such destruction. They should have died out long ago. But they hadn't. The record shifted again now, showing mushroom clouds rising over ruined lands, nuclear firestorms that scarred Earth forever. Yet humanity did not vanish. They rebuilt from ashes, each time stronger than before. Gasps echoed through the hall. Many aliens shivered. Some covered their eyes. To them, nuclear war meant extinction. No civilization had ever recovered from such destruction. Yet humanity had. The old scarred warlord who had spoken earlier leaned forward on his staff, his voice grim. This is why you fear them. Not because of their ship, not because of their weapons. You fear them because they cannot be broken. Every empire here would have died after just one of these wars. But humans? They rise again. Always again. The insectoid admirals clicked their mandibles uneasily. The reptilian general lowered his head, unable to speak. Even the arrogant rulers who once mocked humanity now sat pale and silent, their pride bleeding away. The archives shifted once more, now showing humanity's space age. Rockets lifting through fire, machines on the moon, probes sent across the solar system, and finally ships leaving Earth to cross the stars. But the most disturbing image was not of technology. It was of humans themselves. Images of soldiers dragging each other to safety. Civilians rebuilding shattered cities. Scientists creating medicine in the middle of chaos. A species that fought not just to win, but to survive together. One young alien officer whispered, almost afraid of her own words, "If they build ships the way they fight wars, the galaxy will never be safe from them." The chamber fell silent again. The truth was settling deep into their bones. The human warship outside had not fired at them. It had only given a demonstration. But that was enough, because now every alien ruler could see beyond the metal hull. They could see the truth written in human history. This ship was not their greatest weapon. Their true weapon was their will. The hall grew colder. Even the station lights seemed dimmer, as though the ship's shadow was swallowing everything. Suddenly, alarms blared. The human warship was charging power again. Delegates panicked, shouting over one another. Guards raised weapons that would do nothing against such a vessel. Some leaders screamed to flee the station, while others ordered silence, terrified of provoking the humans further. On the massive screen, the ship's main cannon glowed brighter than before. Energy pulsed through its veins of light. The weapon, aimed directly at the council station itself. Terror struck the chamber. Leaders shouted. Soldiers trembled. Even the warlord who had spoken with such certainty now gripped his staff, his eyes wide. The cannon glowed brighter, until the screen was filled with light. And then it powered down. The glow vanished. The hum of energy faded. The cannon returned to silence. The warship sat still once again, watching, waiting. The aliens stared, breathing heavily, some nearly collapsing from fear. No shot had been fired. No word had been spoken. Yet the message was clearer than any weapon. Blast, the humans were reminding them. We could destroy you, but we choose not to. The hall trembled with unease. No one dared to speak. Finally, the same old warlord broke the silence once again. His voice shook, not with fear, but with awe. They are not showing us what they can do. They are showing us what they choose not to do. The words cut through the chamber like a blade. Every empire felt the weight of them. Humanity's power was not in destruction, but in restraint. And restraint is always more frightening than rage. The warship's engines rumbled again, the sound vibrating through the council walls like thunder. Slowly, the black vessel began to shift position, its silent gaze never leaving the station. Every alien eye followed its movement, hearts pounding, waiting for what would come next. And in the silence, a galaxy realized something horrifying. IF? This was only the beginning of humanity's story among the stars. What would the end look like? Asterisk the demonstration. HFY story, third person. The council chamber pulsed with unease. The warship outside had powered its weapon, aimed directly at the station, and then stopped. That restraint was more terrifying. And destruction. Every delegate now sat trembling, afraid to even breathe too loudly, as though the humans might hear them through the walls of space, that the silence stretched on, heavy and endless. Then suddenly the warship moved. Its colossal frame turned away from the station. For a moment, relief washed through the chamber. Perhaps the humans were leaving. Perhaps the storm had passed, but no. The massive vessel rotated slowly, its cannons locking onto a barren asteroid field nearby. On the giant screens, alien eyes followed its every move, hearts pounding. A low hum filled the air as the ship began to charge again. The glowing veins of energy spread across its black hull like fire racing through dry wood. The main cannon lit up brighter and brighter until the screens were drenched in white light. Target detected, a trembling alien technician whispered. The asteroid, nearly 10 kilometers wide. The council watched, breathless. Then the cannon fired. A beam of pure energy erupted, silent yet unstoppable. It tore through space and struck the massive asteroid dead center. The rock did not shatter into chunks. It did not crack or break apart. It simply ceased to exist. In a blinding flash, the asteroid dissolved into dust, its remains scattering like smoke into the void. The stars themselves seemed to vanish behind the cloud of gasps, screams, and whispers erupted in the chamber. Leaders clutched their seats. Soldiers froze with wide eyes. That was not a weapon. One alien delegate whispered, voice trembling. That was extinction itself. The humans had not just destroyed a moon, not just cracked a planet. They had erased a celestial body in seconds, with precision that no other race could dream of. The hall fell silent again. The only sound the echo of heavy breathing and pounding hearts. Then, for the first time since its arrival, the warship sent another transmission. The speakers across the station crackled, filling the chamber with a voice. Calm, human, unshaken. We mean no harm, the voice said. We seek peace. But understand this. If humanity must fight, we do not fight to lose. The words carried no arrogance, no boast. They were simple truth. The reptilian general, once so full of pride, lowered his head, his scales pale with fear. The insectoid admirals sat motionless, their mandibles frozen in disbelief. Even the mighty warlord with his scars said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Every empire understood the meaning behind the demonstration. The humans were not begging for recognition. They were not showing off for glory. They were setting a line. Peace or destruction. The council chamber shook as whispers spread. If they have one ship like this, how many more? What if? This is not even their strongest? If they can erase a moon, what of a planet? What of us? The fear spread like fire. The mighty empires that once crushed weaker races now trembled at the thought of humanity's wrath. And then the human voice returned. This vessel is not our greatest weapon. It is only a messenger. Remember what you saw today, and remember what you heard. We extend peace, but we are always ready. The transmission ended. The warship powered down, its glow fading until it looked once more like a shard of night drifting in space. It made no further move. It simply waited, its presence heavy as thunderclouds before a storm. The delegates sat, frozen, some with eyes full of terror, others with sweat dripping down their foreheads. None dared speak first. At last, a scarred warlord whispered, almost in awe. This is not their strongest. This is not even close. It is only there. Demonstration. His words cut through the chamber. Every alien ruler knew it was true. If this was a demonstration, then humanity's real strength remained hidden. And hidden strength is the most dangerous kind. The council chamber, once proud and loud, now felt like a tomb. No one cheered. Number. One laughed. The galaxy itself had fallen into silence. But deep in the minds of every leader, one thought began to take root. What happens the day humanity stops demonstrating and starts fighting? The human warship remained outside, silent and patient. Waiting. Asterisk. Silence across the stars. HFY story. Third person. The human warship floated in the darkness, silent once more. It had spoken only a handful of words, fired only a single shot, yet the entire galaxy trembled. Inside the council chamber, no one dared speak loudly. The usual arrogance of the great empires was gone. Where there had once been threats and shouting matches, now there was only silence. Silence. And fear. The insectoid admirals whispered among themselves, their clicking mandibles soft and nervous. The reptilian general sat stiffly, claws tapping against the table, his yellow eyes still locked on the massive vessel outside. The younger. Races huddled together, their voices trembling as they spoke in low tones. It was not just the destruction of the moon. It was not only the erasure of the asteroid. It was the fact that the humans had done it so calmly, so effortlessly, and then stop. They had not attacked the council station. They had not demanded submission. They had only shown a fraction of their power, then waited. That restraint terrified the galaxy more than any display of rage. Above the hall, the council leaders, gathered in a private chamber, their faces pale, their voices hushed. If they wished to destroy us, they would have done so already, one leader said. Yes, another replied, but that does not mean they will not. The question is not whether they can. The question is whether they choose to. The words hung in the air. Heavier than stone. Reports began flooding in from across the stars. Fleets from distant empires that had been preparing for war suddenly stood down, too afraid to move near human space. Smaller species whispered about seeking protection from Earth rather than from their traditional overlords. Entire markets shifted as traders hesitated to cross human trade routes, unsure whether a single warship might appear in the void. The galaxy was changing quietly, but surely. Silence spread across the stars. In the shadows of the chamber, a nervous delegate spoke, voice shaking. We have always measured power by fleets, by numbers. But the humans, they do not measure the way we do. One ship, one single ship, and yet every one of us now fears them. The scarred warlord tapped his staff against the floor, his expression grim. Because their true power is not in their ships. It is in their history. They do not build to impress, they build to survive. And survival is a weapon stronger than all fleets. The younger alien officers exchanged uneasy glances. For them, it was a nightmare. A species that could not be broken, a people who turned every defeat into strength. And now those same people had stepped into the galaxy with weapons no one else could match. Asterisk. Some leaders began whispering of surrender, offering alliances, treaties, anything to avoid humanity's wrath. Others whispered darker thoughts, urging preemptive war before the humans grew too strong. But none of them moved. None dared test. The warship outside, the council chamber, had never been so quiet. It felt as if the very stars held their breath. Then, the silence was broken. The human warship shifted again. Its massive frame rotated, engines glowing faintly. The cannons moved, slowly scanning across the station, and the fleets docked nearby. Every alien froze, their bodies stiff with terror. And then, a new transmission. The speakers crackled, and the calm human voice returned. This ship is one of many. The words were simple, but they landed like thunder. Gasps filled the chamber. Eyes widened. Hearts pounded. One of many. The delegates exchanged fearful glances. If one warship could erase moons and asteroids with ease, what could a fleet do? 100? 1,000? The reptilian general's scales twitched violently. His claws digging into the table. Impossible. They cannot have more. But even he did not believe his own words. The insectoid admiral whispered, "If they say it, it is true." Panic began to spread, even among the strongest empires. If humanity possessed many such ships, then the balance of the galaxy was already broken. No fleet could resist them. No empire could stand against them. The scarred warlord leaned back in his seat, his voice low and heavy. This is the beginning of a new era, one where silence will fall across every star whenever humanity arrives. The chamber trembled with dread. Leaders who once ruled with fear now felt powerless. The young officer who had once whispered her doubts now stared wide-eyed at the screen, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The human warship's engines glowed brighter. It drifted forward slightly, casting its shadow across the council station, covering it like an eclipse. The galaxy held its breath, and then the human voice returned once more, steady and calm. Remember this moment. Remember our silence. We could have spoken with fire. Instead, we chose words. Do not mistake silence for weakness. The transmission ended. The chamber fell still again. No one spoke. No one moved. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. Fleets whispered of it. Colonies trembled at the news. Merchants carried the story to every system. And wherever the words were told, silence followed. Because now the galaxy understood. The day humanity chose to fight, the stars themselves would fall quiet. Asterisk, a new galactic era. HFY story, third person. The council chamber was silent. Not the usual silence of politics, where voices waited to argue, but the silence of fear. The kind of silence that settles over prey when a predator steps into the room. The human warship lingered outside the station, its dark hull reflecting the faint glow of stars. It had destroyed a moon, erased an asteroid, and then spoken words. More terrifying than any weapon, this is one of many. That sentence alone shattered centuries of arrogance. The galaxy's most powerful empires, once proud and untouchable, now sat trembling like frightened children. For the first time in living memory, no one spoke of conquest. No one whispered of threats. The only thought in every alien mind was survival. The scarred warlord, who had lived through countless wars, finally rose to his feet. His staff trembled in his grip. He looked at the delegates, at the leaders of hundreds of species, and spoke in a voice that carried the weight of truth. The balance has ended. The galaxy we knew is gone. Humanity has written a new order with their silence. No one argued, because it was true. Across the stars, news spread at light speed. Traders whispered it in spaceports. Captains carried it to fleets. Colonies heard it on distant worlds. The message of humanity's warship reached every corner of the galaxy. Earth was no longer small. Humanity was no longer weak. On planets where humans had been mocked, now aliens looked at them with wary eyes. In academies where cadets once laughed at Earth's short history, now silence followed whenever a human entered the room. And in war, councils where mighty generals once planned invasions, maps were cleared of any thought of Earth, because no one wanted to be the first. To test them, the insectoid admirals met in secret. We must never provoke them, they clicked. If one ship can silence the galaxy, then a fleet could drown it. The reptilian general, once proud, sat in his chamber alone, his claws shaking. He whispered to himself over and over, one of many, as if trying to convince himself it was not true. but everyone knew it was true. The younger races, who had always lived in fear of greater empires, began whispering different words. Hope. If the humans could humble the mighty, then perhaps the galaxy had finally found a new protector, or a new ruler. Back in the council chamber, the humans sent no further messages. Their warship remained quiet, its cannons dim, its engines humming softly. It had already spoken louder than any voice could dot at last. The ship began to move. Slowly, steadily, it drifted away from the council station. No weapons fired, no words followed. It simply turned and vanished into the stars, leaving behind only silence. But the silence was not relief. That was the silence of fear, the silence of awe, the silence of a galaxy that knew it had just witnessed the beginning of a new age. The old warlord lowered himself back into his seat, his scarred face lit by the faint glow of the stars. His voice was soft, but it carried across the chamber. They thought humanity was small. They thought them weak. But when they saw their warship, the galaxy fell silent. And in that silence, we understood. A new power walks among us. The words spread like fire, repeated from one system to the next. Entire civilizations repeated them as if they were prophecy. A new power walks among us. And so, a new galactic era began. Not with treaties, not with bloodshed, not with grand speeches, but with silence. Because silence itself had become humanity's greatest weapon. Asterisk.